All right, welcome everybody to the first episode of the Carbon Cardboard Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and I'm going to be joined each and every episode with my good friend, Scott, aka the F1 Castle, the artist formerly known as Pirates Card Castle.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. We haven't talked, we talk Formula One cards every day, but it's good to be back in podcast form here on YouTube. And it's like you said, it's going to be a lot of fun, Scott.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. I mean, we've got a new product coming out. We've got a new season about to start. I mean, guys, it is time to get into F1 cards and card. Come on. I mean, we've got this. I'm excited.
All right. Each of these episodes are going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. Can't promise some of them might be shorter. Some of them might be longer. We're here to talk Formula One. We're here to talk about the Formula One card hobby, which Scott and I are very passionate about. Scott, you're a man that needs very little introduction, but if anybody is not aware of who you are and what you've been doing, let's give them the 10-second elevator pitch here.
Sure. So my name is Scott. I am the owner of the F1 Castle. I do Formula One card breaks for a living. You can find me on Instagram at F1 Castle, and of course now on Fanatics Live. F1 Castle is my shop there, so make sure to check it out and join in the Formula One card hobby.
So Scott breaks the cards. I prep the cards. That's all you need to know.
Very true.
All right. So I'm Q3 Cards. I don't know. I guess that name's kind of stuck. People kind of refer to me as Q3, and I mean it's kind of has like a financial term, but I mean Q3 in Formula One. I mean you're doing pretty good if you can be, in the final 10 and qualifying here. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, we are going to talk about 2023 Topps Chrome Formula One in this first episode. We are days away from the initial release from Topps, and as you mentioned, Scott, things are looking pretty exciting. You've already had a preview video out on your YouTube channel, the F1 Castle, and we're here to talk about what's changed since then, because it's been a few weeks, and how are we going to go about attacking this? What are the tips and strategies that you as a collector should be looking to do? We're going to talk about timings, maybe some undervalued drivers and teams to target, talk about some of these really exciting inserts, and the elephant in the room. What are we going to do with Oscar Piastri? Because that is what everybody wants to talk about with this set. So we're going to dive into all of that in this little segment here. But Scott, just overview wise, like, since you did your initial video, and we'll put the links to those down below so that people can check that out and head over to your channel and watch part 1 and part 2. Like, what's the biggest thing? Because I know we're going to start showing some of the images here on screen, Scott, but like those with anything, usually Topps, it's like a fabrication of what the card could look like, but it's obviously going to be very different. Well, not very different, but possibly different.
Yeah, so I think we've seen some subtle changes, right? I think one of the ones that stands out to me is the F1 logo is a little bit smaller. I think that was something that maybe was a concern for some folks, how large it was. That section with the carbon kind of still takes up that much of the card, but the F1 logo itself is a little bit smaller, which I think is a nice touch. But really, I mean, not that much has changed from the cards. I mean, we've seen some new images of Sapphire. I maybe have seen some of the cards. I think some folks have been online kind of ripping them a little early. So we've seen some images of the cards, and I think they look pretty nice. I got to say, I like the design of quite a few of them. We've seen some of the inserts. Now we're getting images of some of the newer inserts, which I'm really excited about.
So I'll have it on screen here just as a quick refresher. We're talking about, the logo here. As you mentioned, it's going to be different. This is the card a lot of people are going to want to hit. Is this Oscar?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, Oscar Piastri rookie card for McLaren autograph is a massive chase. He's also got the Futuro autographs, which we'll see as well. The Futuro design is very different from the rest of the set. Really kind of sets itself apart. I think is a unique element for the set this year.
So price, this seems to be different. I know I've got I just got my shipping notification from Tops earlier today. I was, I guess, lucky enough to get a couple boxes. I've got two coming. I wasn't able to get a case or anything, but I have two boxes coming directly from Tops. It says it's going to arrive on Friday, which is release day,
That's right.
uh, on the 16th here. Price wise, it was a lot cheaper initially, but it seems like it's going up.
Yeah, so I think, last year we saw the box price was actually a little bit higher. It was around $300 per box, and then secondary distributors were actually lower. They were closer to 250. This year it's the inverse. So if you got a box on tops.com during that, early launch, count yourself lucky because 235, it's going to be tough to find a box in that price range again. We're seeing on the secondary market at places like Blowout, et cetera, they're much more expensive. We're up to like 285 a box. So you save yourself around $50 a box if you were able to score those. So I think that's nice. I think we were always going to see a bit of a price increase over time, but it just happened kind of almost before the launch, unfortunately. So yeah, I think we'll see boxes. If you can find them at 250, that is an amazing price, and I'd be snapping those up. Upwards to 300 honestly isn't even that bad. I think you'll see them kind of in that 250 to 300 range for the most part in this first week.
So Scott, you've had your finger on the pulse of the Formula One hobby since 2021 when the initial 2020 set came out, and have now seen 2020, 2021, 2022, and very shortly here 2023. You've been breaking this stuff all along, so and especially trying to source this stuff, like what happens based on what you're hearing. Let's just run through a couple different scenarios here. We don't have a crystal ball. We're not going to go out, a half a year to a year here, but based on what you've seen with prior releases, what you're seeing and hearing with this one, and obviously, in the first week, obviously people are going to go gangbusters for this stuff. Like the hype is never going to be higher in the first week. Do you think prices are going to jump even in that first week for breaks and stuff?
Yeah, I do think we're going to see some increases, not only on breaks, but in the secondary market. And I mean, it is what happens every single year is initially the boxes come out at a certain price, breaks are at a certain price, and everyone starts ripping. And the singles are going to be the highest they will ever be, at least in the short term, initially, right? In the first month, singles will be the best. And this goes for pretty much every product in every sport, right? But same falls here for Formula One. Singles will be the highest in that first month. So breaks will be the lowest, singles the highest. It's probably a good idea to get in early if you are planning to get in, right? If you're someone who likes to kind of just sit and watch and then buy singles, you actually probably want to wait. You actually probably want to wait like a couple months and let prices come back down a little bit. But if you like joining breaks, you like the excitement, the entertainment of the chase, I would definitely get in as early and as often as you can. Obviously be responsible, but prices are only going to go up on brakes and sealed wax, and prices are likely only going to go down on singles in the short term. It's hard to say what'll happen long term though.
So in like that first month, you think some of that initial buzz, like people are going to empty their budget, try to get as many as they can right off. But I mean, you think we're going to see a little bit of a lull, or you think based on what you're seeing about the set, does this have some sustainability in the first few months where you, you think that this has got some traction? And a lot of the time you'll get the initial hype and it falls back, and then a couple months later you get people that want to come back in again. They're kind of like, their pockets are a little bit more flush of selling all those singles. They're going to try to go for the really low number parallels.
Yeah, no, I think we could see something similar, especially because Sapphire is actually due to release in only, 2 to 3 weeks. So I think we're going to see another instance where Chrome is super hot right out of the gates, and then maybe a little bit of a lull as folks turn to Sapphire. And like you said, recharge their wallets. But I don't think there will be too much of a drop off, right? I mean, right now, preseason testing is almost upon us, and then we're going to be into racing in early March, and then we're going to be right into it, right, with the F1 season. So I think people will continue to want to open these cards, kind of relive some of last year, look at all the parallels they have, of this year of 2023 product, and look to 2024. And especially for F2, with a lot of drivers having their first appearance cards as well, I think that it's going to be something that people are going to do a little prospecting on, and will be fun for folks to kind of play along.
Well, that's a good segue, Scott, because I want to ask you about some of like these undervalued teams and drivers. Some of these F2 drivers, it's their first appearance, kind of a hobby rookie card, like a Bowman, if this was baseball. Everybody knows the main guys, the Maxes and the Leclercs and the Lewises and et cetera. But who are some of those teams that you can, based on what you're seeing for pricing, not only for yourself, but how other breakers are looking about going in this? Where do you think some of these spots might be if you're maybe collecting on a budget, and maybe you want to tackle some of these cards and teams that might have a little bit of a ramp up as maybe people catch on, or as we'll talk about with all these other episodes, because we'll talk more about than just the cards, is the on track results as well. Is on track results actually do usually correlate with sales, and break prices will and do fluctuate throughout the year based on how the teams are doing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Brian. I think in terms of, you know, teams that might be a good buy, or drivers that might be a good buy, there's a couple ways to look at it, right? I think right now, in terms of undervalued drivers, I actually have my eyes on Joe Guan Yu and Kevin Magnussen. Now, some of the reasons for this is that generally those are lower priced drivers. We're seeing them in anywhere from, like the 25 upwards to 45, somewhere in that range, right, per case. And K-Mag and Joe both have a celebration and an image variation. So I mean, they've got some big hit potential, and they're priced pretty affordably. So I think that those two could be ones that, if you're breaking on a budget, you like those drivers, those would be the good guys to target. In terms of, on track action and potentially what might happen later in the season with driver moves, etc. Two of the guys that I'm actually watching are Fernando Alonso and Alexander Albon. They're two of the main candidates to take Lewis Hamilton's 2025 Mercedes seat. Obviously, Andrea Kimi Antonelli is another guy who's not in the set, who's kind of in that mix there. But if we're looking at just the F1 drivers that have a shot, I think those are two of the guys that we could definitely see potentially go over to Mercedes. Alonso started out of the gate very hot last year in Aston Martin, so potentially they might, bring a good car. I would also have your eyes set on testing, right? Testing isn't going to give you an exact barometer, but it'll give you at least a little bit. And then, like Brian said, pay attention to the races as they come up, right? Because which teams are, towards the top of the field and towards the bottom of the field, that may impact the sales. If all of a sudden we're seeing, McLaren and Ferrari getting podium spots, or is it Mercedes and Aston Martin, right? That's going to impact their driver's value. So, I would definitely pay attention to on-track action. And then, like I said, Joe and K-Mag, probably some value buys. In terms of the F2 guys, so we've got some first appearances for some folks this year. I think Behrman and Martins are the two
Mhm.
main ones, right? They're two favorites to potentially win Formula 2 this year. It's their second year, both of them. They both had great seasons last year. So those two first appearance. Then there's also Maloney, Miney, Arthur Leclerc, Crawford, and Hadjar. Those guys also have their first appearance and have done solid in their first season last year. So, I think there are a couple others that have first appearance, but those are the guys that I'm really watching for, because I think that they could make a splash in this season of Formula 2. And since it's their first appearance card, you get to kind of do a little prospecting as the season goes along, similar to last year with like Ayumu Iwasa, right? He was someone who, it was his first appearance last year. He was in the championship battle almost, up until the last few races. So I think we're going to see some similar drivers in that realm.
Yeah, some good. I know I'm hearing an awful lot about Behrman, and then I also note too. I've seen a lot of breakers when people are claiming Leclerc. Most breaks are claimed on Instagram, and I'm seeing a lot of people being like, "All right, which one do you want, Arthur or do you want Charles?" Staying along with Williams there with Albon, I'm kind of a Logan Sargent. I think could be interesting. He's so cheap right now that I think a lot of people have written him off. I really have got my eye on Williams this year, potentially maybe as like a 6th or 7th place finish. I think Vols has got him in going in the right direction. So don't
That's a good
necessarily
point.
don't necessarily sleep on Sargent. You're going to get a chance to get his rookie cards, and I don't know if he's as bad as we saw, because at the end of the season he was starting to have some stronger results. But as we'll talk about all the time with the Netflix series Drive to Survive, I mean, he was really driving to survive with his seat
Yeah.
at that point. So
No, but he
all
made
right,
it, and he put on 7 kilograms of muscle in the off season. So, we'll see how that plays out.
America. All right, Scott, I know you're super excited, as am I, with a lot of these new inserts. I'll bring the image up here in a little bit. In your review video, you talked about how rare they're going to be. You're dialed in. You've got the finger on the pulse of the hobby of what's going on. Do you think the common collector is going to realize how rare these things are when they get them? Like, let's just say you're somebody like me that I'm going to get a couple boxes this Friday and I'm going to rip them open because me and sealed wax just, it doesn't last. I can't hold it. Somebody hits one of these cards. I don't know that they're going to know that they're as rare as they are. So, like, how are we going to tackle this? Because are they going to be? I'm just thinking back to like 2020 when we've got a mutual friend that hit a gold Max Verstappen track tag, and the market hadn't materialized for those yet. And now in hindsight, we know how valuable those are. Sorry, Chris. I don't know. I'm interested to see how the market's going to be reacting to these, because I don't think people are going to realize like how hard it's going to be. Like, some of these you have to open several cases to even get one.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really good point. And I think, the main thing we can do, right? And that's what we're trying to do here on this podcast is educate, right? Education. Because first of all, I've seen some of the packs, and the odds are not on the back of the pack. So there's even less information in collectors' hands. And if you're going to hit something like a constructor's crest or a F1 armor or hidden gems, they are extremely rare cards to even just get, an out of 199 parallel on, the constructor's crests, and then F1 armor and, the R2 Grand Prix, the hidden gems, like all of these cards are pretty rare. So, they're going to be tough pulls. And, hopefully folks, are wise enough to kind of, make sure they know what they have, right, so to speak, and not just kind of rush and list it off as a refractor or something. But I think the big ones, in my personal opinion, F1 armor, constructors crests, I mean, those two for me in terms of inserts are just the cream of the crop, right? I've seen some images of both and I am very excited. So
I can't
we'll
wait to
we'll
see some of these
yeah,
images.
I'm very excited. Cannot wait to pull some. But yeah, so if you hit those cards, if you hit a constructor's crest or an F1 armor, do not let it go for pennies on the dollar. Absolutely not.
Yeah, especially even if you get I mean, even if you get like Haas or anything like that, do not just get rid of it, because they are going to be very rare. And it's going to take, as we'll talk about in a future episode here, sometimes it takes a few years for one of the biggest cards in a set to be unearthed. And that's a little tease. Anybody that
That's
knows
true.
Scott knows what we're talking about here, but we will save that story for another day. Let's end on Oscar Piastri, Scott. I know that a lot of people in the F1 castle are chasing Oscar. There's so many there's a ton of Oscar Piastri collectors out there, like Hollywood Trading Co. and others that are really big in the hobby. Like, I've seen a lot of his spots like Snapfill, like just within minutes of being posted. So the hype is high. You've talked about this before. It's the most high profile rookie we've gotten since the first appearance in the 2020 Topps Chrome set, for the first appearance of all the drivers, basically. Not necessarily their rookie cards, because that's all debatable. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that at another day, but this is the first big one. the first one that has a sprint win, the first one that, in my opinion, has World Driver Championship potential. What do we do here? Because like, is it you jump in now, or is it even going to get worse, or is the hype going to die if he doesn't get the on track results? I'm really curious, Scott, how this is going to play out this year.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, a lot of this does come down to on track results. And I think you've got to decide, and I'll kind of give my advice here, but you have to decide where you think McLaren ultimately where their car is going to be this year. Because if they're fourth or fifth fastest, I mean, podiums are going to be extremely tough to come by. But if they are second, like they were a lot towards the end of last year, he will be on the podium and he will have chances for race wins. And that is only going to make the hype just continue to grow for Oscar. So a lot kind of hangs in the balance with that on track action, to your point. But right now, I mean, we've got, 3 weeks basically or 2.5. We've got a few weeks here before we have any on track action. And everyone's kind of going in blind. If you can find cheap spots, at this point, I'd say anything like under $500 a case is probably a good buy. I would go for it. You're not going to find singles super cheap for Piastri early on. If you're playing the singles game, again, you're going to want to wait and wait and wait, and maybe you're hoping they start slow like they did last year and then come on towards the end and we see a big boom. But I would, try to spread it out. I think one thing you could take a look at is maybe go for the McLaren spot, because I've seen, like you said, Oscar spots, snap filling instantly. Anyone who posts a break, anybody. I teased it earlier. My grandma posts a break and Oscar Piastri spot is going to go right away. But McLaren, not necessarily. And it's not that much more per case to pick up McLaren versus Oscar. And you're getting Lando, who, again, if that McLaren is good, Lando might be the one who's on the podium, who's getting wins. And then maybe you're hedging your bets a little bit between the Lando versus Oscar. If you're picking up McLaren, it also gives you the opportunity to get that McLaren constructor's crest as well, F1 armor for both those drivers. So I think getting the McLaren spot and pick your team driver or breaks might not be a bad idea. But again, I mean, I'm going to just continue to kind of hammer home this point. If you are someone who likes getting into breaks, the earlier you can do it, the better, because prices will only go up from here, into the next month in terms of break spots. So I would try to get in wherever you can, whether that's on, Fanatics Live or on Instagram, wherever it may be, try to hop in. There's people that are taking down spots everywhere. So, just set those notifications and be ready to just type in Piastri if you want them.
Yeah, the hype is huge as you mentioned here. So you're mentioning the on track results there. I'll give a shout out to our other prior podcasting friend TC here. He's very high in McLaren. He's called for multiple wins, and he's a big Lando guy. So I had to give him grief that it's going to be a shame when Oscar takes down all these wins instead of Max getting all of them. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun time doing the show. I know we've had a lot of people reaching out. Glad that we're podcasting again, doing these in video form. We'll have it in audio form, like on Apple Podcasts and all those, Spotify and Amazon Music, whatever, wherever we can put this, we're going to do it. Definitely reach out to us if you've got things that you want us to cover. We're going to do these more topic based than episodic form because nobody really has time to listen to a 90-minute podcast these days or watch it for that sake. So it's going to be fun. Looking forward to it, Scott. Somehow we kept this under about 25 minutes, which is a minor miracle because both you and I love to talk. You do it all the time in all your breaks. So just
Very
with
true.
a few seconds left, what do we got coming up this week at the F1 Castle and at Fanatics Live?
Yeah, so I will be on Fanatics Live for Early Access Day. So it's on Thursday, February 15th at 9 a.m. We will be going live, ripping all day long. And then I'm actually flying down to Florida to hang out with my friends Double A Mint at their release event, and there's going to be an RB19, the championship winning Red Bull car from last year. They're live at the show. So I'll be filming a lot of content, have some stuff up on Instagram, and then we'll be flying right back. Saturday, we're going to be back on Fanatics Live. So basically breaking on Fanatics Live pretty much all through, release and release weekend is mostly going to be on Fanatics Live. And then we'll be on Instagram and Fanatics Live throughout the next few weeks, but it's going to be pretty much nothing but 2023 Chrome. 2020 is going to have to take a back burner for a little bit.
Awesome. Good stuff. So we'll have to work on whatever our outro is here. We were talking before we actually hit the record button. So we'll work on that, but I guess we'll just go like this. So for Bryan, Q3 cards, for Scott at the F1 Castle. We'll see you next time.
Keep your